Griffin, Georgia, in mid-February, embraces the mild and unpredictable charm of late winter in the southeastern United States. The morning air carries a brisk chill, with temperatures hovering in the mid-30s to low 40s. A light frost coats the ground, shimmering silver under the first rays of sunlight. As the day progresses, the sun rises higher, gradually warming the air. By late morning, the temperature climbs into the upper 50s to low 60s, creating a comfortable, invigorating atmosphere. A gentle breeze rustles the bare branches of oak and pecan trees, carrying with it the fresh scent of damp earth and the faint promise of spring. The sky alternates between soft blue and patchy white clouds, though overcast days sometimes cast a more muted light over the town. By late afternoon, Griffin feels alive with the subdued colors of winter. The earthy browns and muted greens of the surrounding fields and forests are occasionally punctuated by the early budding of trees or the bright yellow of a blooming daffodil, hinting at the coming season. Evenings usher in a swift drop in temperature as the sun sets, sinking the air back into the 40s or lower. The cool night invites residents to bundle up, with clear skies offering an unobstructed view of the stars. Nestled on the outskirts of Griffin, Golden Oak's assisted living facility blends into its residential surroundings, creating a peaceful and welcoming environment. The single-story building, with its soft beige brick and white siding, is inviting and homelike. A wide covered porch spans the front, adorned with rocking chairs and hanging flower baskets. Residents gather here to enjoy the breeze and watch the occasional dog walker or passing car. The grounds of Golden Oaks are meticulously maintained. The lawn is lush and green, dotted with seasonal flower beds and oak and magnolia trees that provide shade. A paved walkway circles the building, offering residents a safe and scenic path for their daily strolls. Inside, the facility radiates warmth and comfort. The central common area, with its plush seating, cheerful artwork, and large fireplace, is the heart of the building. Nearby, the dining area buzzes with activity during meals, the aroma of homemade Southern cooking filling the air. Michael Pete Harvey, a resident of Golden Oaks, is a local treasure. At 83, Pete is known for his quick wit and love of storytelling. A former mechanic and Army veteran, his tales span from rebuilding classic cars to adventures from his military service. Despite declining health, Pete's sharp mind and warm personality make him a favorite among staff and residents alike. On this particular February day, Pete sticks to his routine, taking his daily walk around the grounds. The mild, overcast weather, with a soft breeze rustling the oak trees, suits his pace. Pete moves slowly, his breathing assisted by the oxygen tank he wheels behind him, but he insists on maintaining his independence. The staff keeps a watchful eye from a distance, ready to help if needed, but Pete prefers the quiet rhythm of his steps and the familiarity of the landscape. Golden Oaks, much like Griffin itself, is a place where life moves at a steady, deliberate pace. It's a community where relationships matter, where the past is cherished, and where even the smallest moments hold significance. For Pete, the serenity of this day and the quiet strength of his surroundings reflect a life well lived, rooted in resilience and connection. Pete shuffles along the paved path that encircles the property, his thoughts drifting like the soft clouds overhead. His mind lingers on his late wife, his partner of over 50 years, and the family they built together. He thinks about his children and grandchildren, scattered across Georgia and beyond, their visits always too short to satisfy the ache of longing. And then, unbidden, the memory of that day in Birmingham surfaces. The day he and Barry Beau Fims took the life of 13-year-old Victor Mare. Regret presses down on him like a weight he can never put down. Yet in the quiet of these walks, Pete finds a fragile peace. Reaching his favorite spot on the property, Pete pauses at a bench overlooking the small pond behind the facility. The water, modest in size, reflects the muted February light, its surface occasionally broken by a duck's paddle or the ripple of a fish. Pete lowers himself onto the bench with practiced care, his oxygen tank hissing softly as he adjusts the nasal cannula. Leaning back, he rests his weathered hands on the cool wood and gazes at the tranquil scene before him. The breeze stirs, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Pete closes his eyes, letting the rhythmic lapping of the water against the shore wash over him. His breathing slows, each exhale mingling with the soft sounds of nature. For a brief moment, time seems to pause and Pete feels a stillness he hasn't known in years. Unbeknownst to him, a figure stands at the edge of the property, concealed among the trees. The operative, a shadowy member of the network, watches him with steady, calculating eyes. Pete Harvey, a name tied to an act of violence that has drawn the attention of justice long deferred, is the target. Today, Pete is meant to meet his end, not by the quiet passage of time, but by the hand of this unseen executioner. The operative moves closer, their approach calculated and silent, blending seamlessly with the landscape. Each step is deliberate, their presence a shadow creeping toward its mark. As they near the bench, their focus sharpens, ready to complete the task. But as they close the final distance, they stop abruptly. Pete Harvey is already gone. The operative hesitates, stepping closer to confirm what they now suspect. Pete's head tilts gently to the side, his expression serene. His hands rest motionless on his lap, and his chest no longer rises and falls. The oxygen tank beside him continues its quiet hiss, unaware that its purpose has ended. Natural causes have claimed Pete Harvey before anyone else could. For a moment, the operative remains still, staring at the man who has passed without struggle or violence. The simplicity of the scene is disarming. The lake ripples softly behind him, the breeze carrying whispers through the trees as if nature itself mourns his passing. The operative retreats into the shadows, shaken. There is nothing more to be done. Pete Harvey, whose life had been marked by both darkness and light, has slipped away on his own terms, in a place that brought him comfort. Later, staff members find Pete and gently carry him back inside. The air around Golden Oaks grows heavy with quiet grief, as residents and caregivers absorb the loss of a man whose stories and warmth had touched them all. Pete's passing, though unassuming, leaves a void in the hearts of those who knew him. For the operative, this moment becomes something more, a stark reminder of life's fragility and the unexpected dignity of an unplanned ending. As they fade into the distance, the operative carries with them an unspoken reverence for the man who left this world not in chaos but in peace. Victor Mare's case resolved. Victor Mare's case resolved. Victor Mare's case resolved. The decommissioned rail yard rests on the outskirts of Sylacauga, a weathered town about an hour southeast of Anniston. Once a bustling hub for industrial transport, it now lies dormant, a rusted sprawl of tracks and decaying train cars. The air carries the faint metallic tang of old machinery, and an occasional gust of wind whistles through the skeletal remains of its structures. The yard spreads across several acres, bordered by dense woods that provide a natural curtain, shielding the area from prying eyes. The ground is uneven, scattered with patches of cracked asphalt and gravel that crunch underfoot. Wild grass sprouts defiantly between the rusting rails, nature slowly reclaiming what was once its own. Derelict buildings stand in solemn witness to the passage of time, their windows shattered and their walls streaked with creeping vines. Among them, the old maintenance shed dominates the scene, its corrugated metal roof sagging under decades of neglect. Inside, cobwebs drape high rafters, and the air hangs heavy with the lingering stench of oil, a perfect vantage point for observing the yard. The operatives establish their base inside an abandoned rail office, its walls adorned with faded schematics and yellowing notices from years gone by. A battered desk and steel filing cabinets bear the scars of time and graffiti, but they serve as makeshift stations for their mission. Max hunches over a portable console, fingers dancing across the keys as Dwayne watches a live drone feed on a monitor. The rail yard's labyrinthine layout of tracks and derelict cars creates a perfect maze for stealth. Graffiti-covered train cars sit like forgotten sentinels, their wheels sunk deep into the earth. Shadows stretch and shift as the winter sun rises, creating fleeting pockets of darkness where operatives move silently. The chain-link fence surrounding the yard is bent in places, patched with half-hearted repairs that speak of neglect. Faded no trespassing signs sway in the wind, their warnings long ignored. The hum of an approaching engine breaks the quiet, cutting through the eerie stillness. Agent Monroe's dark sedan glides toward the yard, its low rumble a harbinger of the impending confrontation. The wind picks up, rattling loose metal plates and carrying the faint scent of rust and earth. Inside his car, Monroe's sharp gaze darts to the roadside signs, his instincts bristling with suspicion. Dwayne's voice cuts through the comms, calm yet commanding. "This is it. Watch him. He'll spot things we didn't plan for." Time seems to stretch as Monroe maneuvers through the detour. The operatives, hidden in the shadows of the abandoned rail cars and within the derelict shed, hold their positions. The air crackles with tension, every creak of old metal and whisper of the wind amplified in the silence. The stage is set, the trap ready to spring, but everyone knows Monroe is no ordinary target. His calculated movements and piercing gaze make him a predator, not prey. In this battleground of rust and shadows, the smallest misstep could cost them everything. As Monroe's sedan nears the roadblock, the operatives play their parts with rehearsed precision. A man in a fluorescent vest waves lazily, signaling a detour due to a supposed gas leak. Monroe's sharp eyes sweep the scene, lingering on details others might miss. The gloves not matching regulation, the casual posture a shade too practiced. He adjusts his grip on the steering wheel, his expression betraying nothing. In the control room miles away, Dwayne studies the live feeds, his focus razor sharp. "Hold your positions, divert his attention, but don't engage unless necessary." The traffic beyond the yard mirrors the unease of the moment. Vehicles crawl along, brake lights flickering sporadically. A pickup rattles past, tools clanging in its bed, followed by a sleek SUV whose tinted windows hide its occupants. On the service road, an old bus belches exhaust as it lumbers forward. The atmosphere is thick with the ordinary chaos of morning traffic, masking the extraordinary tension of the unfolding operation. Inside Monroe's car, his fingers hover near the console, brushing the biometric lock on a compartment that holds the coveted Daylon drive. His instincts, honed by years of counterintelligence work, scream that something is off. The hum of his car's advanced countermeasures feels like a lifeline, but Monroe remains outwardly calm. His storm-gray eyes flick between the road and the detour signs, calculating his next move. Dwayne's voice echoes in the operative's ears, steady and resolute. "Stay sharp. This isn't over." The game has begun, and in this decaying rail yard, every shadow and silence is a potential weapon. Monroe is a formidable opponent, but the operatives know they must outmaneuver him before he turns the tide in his favor. The stakes are high, and the clock is ticking. The decommissioned rail yard sprawls on the outskirts of Sylacauga, a testament to its industrial past, now enveloped by decay and silence. Semi-trailers rumble past in the distance, their engines growling as they haul lumber and crates of industrial equipment. The mid-morning sun glints off their metallic frames, blending with the metallic thrum of idling cars and the occasional screech of brakes. The air carries the acrid tang of fuel, mingling with the sharp, musty scent of rust that lingers over the yard. Beyond the tangled traffic, the road narrows, curving toward more isolated terrain. Traffic thins here, populated mainly by service vans and solitary commuters taking shortcuts. A brightly painted delivery truck rolls by, its cheerful logo a jarring contrast to the weathered chain-link fence and rust-streaked remnants of the rail yard beyond. Drivers sit captive in their vehicles, impatience etched in their gestures. Hands tap rhythmically against steering wheels, heads crane to glimpse the source of the delay, and faces blur behind layers of glass and shadow. Somewhere among them, a man who remains a ghost to many, a dangerous agent, moves unknowingly toward a trap. Agent Monroe's sharp gaze flickers over the scene, suspicion darkening his expression. His fingers hover near the console in his car before retreating as he surveys his surroundings. A disguised operative directs traffic ahead, his casual gestures convincing enough to deflect attention from the unusual tension building in the air. "Just a short delay, folks. Gas leak ahead," the operative calls out, his tone laced with reassurance. The act is flawless, but Monroe's narrowed eyes betray his wariness. Nearby, a matte black robotic device, no larger than a child's palm, creeps along the gravel. It moves with precision, each limb extending and retracting silently. Controlled from the war room, it slinks toward Monroe's sedan, its LED eyes blinking faintly green as it reaches the vehicle's undercarriage. "Bot's in position," Max mutters, his fingers dancing across his keyboard, sweat glistening on his brow. The robot inserts a micro-hack tool into the car's secure compartment, working to bypass a biometric lock. Dwayne's eyes lock onto the live feed, his jaw tightening as the seconds stretch. Monroe straightens in his seat, his storm gray eyes scanning his mirrors, his sharp instincts honing in on something amiss. "What's the holdup, Max?" Dwayne's voice is calm but edged with urgency. Max exhales sharply, his focus unwavering. "Encryption's tougher than expected. Need another minute." Monroe's hand inches toward the alert button on his console, his eyes narrowing as he scans the scene. Dwayne doesn't hesitate. "Activate the angry driver," he orders, his tone clipped but confident. Across the road, the door of a beat-up red truck slams open with a metallic groan. A burly man in a tattered denim jacket, frayed baseball cap, and mud-caked boots barrels out like he's about to wrestle a bear. His face is a tapestry of exasperation, veins bulging slightly on his forehead as he storms toward the operatives. He waves his arms with the wild energy of a man wronged by fate itself. "Hey, what in the name of sweet cornbread has taken so long?" His booming voice cuts through the drone of engines and idle murmurs, drawing the attention of every driver in the vicinity. "I've got a truck full of goats here, and they ain't gonna wait forever. You ever tried calming down a goat? They're more stubborn than my uncle after 3 shots of whiskey." The operatives exchange quick glances, their faces a mix of amusement and determination. "Sir, it's just a gas leak," one of them replies, his tone carefully modulated for patience. "We're doing everything we can." The man lets out an exaggerated groan, throwing his hands up in the air. "Gas leak? Gas leak? You're telling me you've got this whole road locked up tighter than my mother-in-law's liquor cabinet over a little sniff of gas? I could have fixed this with a can of beans and a Zippo lighter." Several drivers in the line chuckle nervously, unsure whether he's serious. He pivots toward the nearest car, where a middle-aged woman watches him with wide eyes, her hands gripping the steering wheel like it might save her. "Ma'am, you ever seen anything so ridiculous? A gas leak, they say. Back in my day, we just sniffed out the leak ourselves and got on with it." The operative closest to him keeps his expression neutral, though his lips twitch as if fighting a grin. "Sir, for everyone's safety, we need to handle this professionally." "Oh, professionally," the man exclaims, spinning on his heel with the theatrical flair of a man auditioning for a reality show. "Well, why didn't you say so? Let me just grab my tools." He stomps back to his truck, the gravel crunching under his boots with every determined step. Monroe's attention sharpens, his stormy eyes tracking the man's movements. The burly driver yanks open his truck bed, rummaging through a chaotic pile of tools and miscellaneous items with the gusto of a man on a mission. "Here we go," he bellows triumphantly, holding up a blowtorch like a trophy. The nozzle glints in the sun, and he waves it above his head for the crowd to see. "If y'all ain't gonna fix it, I will! Just show me where this so-called leak is, and we'll get this sorted faster than you can say barbecue." The operative barely holds it together, his shoulders stiff as he bites back a laugh. "Sir, please, there's no need for that." "No need? No need?" the man interrupts, advancing with the blowtorch like a man possessed. "Do I look like the kind of fella who leaves a job half done? Stand back, son, and let a real professional handle it." The drivers behind him erupt in laughter, some honking their horns in a strange show of support. Monroe, meanwhile, stares at the scene with a mix of irritation and disbelief. His hand retreats from the console as his brows knit together in what can only be described as grudging curiosity. The burly man turns back to the line of cars, pointing at a bewildered young driver in a sedan. "You got a lighter, son? We'll speed this up. I'll have us out of here before your Spotify playlist hits its next sad song." "Sir, really, there's no need." The operative tries again, his voice cracking slightly with suppressed laughter. The man waves him off. "Nonsense. If I can keep goats from eating my wife's begonias, I can handle a little gas. Where's the leak? Show me the spot." Monroe shakes his head slowly, a flicker of exasperation passing over his features. The commotion has fully captured his attention, distracting him long enough for Max's whispered voice to come through the comms. "We're in." The robot's LED eyes pulse rapidly as it completes its task. With delicate precision, it swaps the thumb drive for an identical decoy before retreating into the shadows. "Pull back in 60 seconds. We're clear," Dwayne commands, his voice low and resolute. The burly man finally lowers the blowtorch, throwing his hands up dramatically. Fine, y'all want to take your sweet time, go ahead. But if my goats start acting up, I'm sending you the vet bill. He stomps back to his truck, grumbling loudly enough for everyone to hear. A gas leak, for crying out loud. Next, they'll be stopping traffic for a loose squirrel. The operatives let out barely concealed sighs of relief as the man slams his truck door and crosses his arms, glaring theatrically at the road crew. Monroe, distracted but still alert, finally shifts his gaze back to the road ahead. In the war room, Dwayne leans back slightly, his focus unwavering as he watches Monroe's car roll forward. A faint smirk crosses his lips. Well done, he mutters, his voice tinged with approval. That's how you handle a goat man with a blowtorch. The robot scuttles away, blending into the debris as the irate driver storms back to his truck, still grumbling. Monroe watches, his irritation fading as he shifts his focus back to the road. In the war room, Dwayne straightens, his eyes scanning the monitors. The tension in the room eases slightly, though the operatives know there is no time to rest. Mission accomplished, Dwayne murmurs, his gaze already shifting to the next target. Max slumps in his chair, exhaling deeply as the adrenaline ebbs. That was close, he mutters, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Dwayne nods, his focus unwavering. 1 down, 4 to go. His voice is steady, but the weight of the operation hangs heavy in the air. The team moves with precision, their victory fleeting as the next challenge looms on the horizon. Meanwhile, back in Allen, Texas, Detective Neil Walker pulls up to the chaotic scene on Birchwood Drive, his headlights cutting through the gathering crowd of onlookers. The once quiet street now hums with the murmur of horrified neighbors and the occasional wail of a distant siren. He steps out of his car, his trench coat billowing slightly in the cool night breeze, and strides purposefully toward the yellow police tape. An officer intercepts him near the perimeter, visibly shaken, his face pale under the harsh glare of the streetlights. "Detective," the officer stammers, glancing nervously back toward the house. "It's bad in there, really bad." Walker doesn't pause. He ducks under the tape and enters the house, the metallic tang of blood and the sharp bite of pepper spray hitting him immediately. The scene is chaos. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, and streaks of crimson covering the floor and walls. At the center of it all lies Roger Cale's lifeless body, his head reduced to a gory ruin. The splatter of blood and brain matter creates a grotesque halo around him. Walker exhales sharply, kneeling to inspect the scene closer. He notes the shattered bones, the deep dents in the hardwood, and the grotesque angles of Cale's limbs. "What happened here?" he asks the nearest officer, his voice low and controlled. The officer hesitates, clearly struggling to articulate what he witnessed. He just lost it, sir. Said something about people being inside him. We tried to restrain him, but he started smashing his head into the floor. We couldn't stop him." Walker stands, his mind racing. First Barry Meeks, now Roger Cale, both former officers involved in the Darwin Potts case, both displaying similar psychotic episodes and both ending in gruesome, violent deaths. "This isn't a coincidence," he mutters to himself. He turns to the lead officer on the scene. "I need a list of everyone else who was involved in the Darwin Potts 3 case. Where are they now?" The officer nods, visibly relieved to have direction. "We've got the list, sir. I can get their current addresses sent to your phone." "Do it," Walker says firmly. "We need to find them now. If this is a pattern, they're all in danger." Detective Walker grips the steering wheel, his knuckles white as he speeds away from Birchwood Drive. With a quick swipe on his phone, he opens a conference line, patching in Detectives Dexter Brown, Keith Johnson, Tony Stargill, and Julius Ray Wilson. The urgency in his voice is unmistakable as the call connects. "Listen up," Walker begins, his tone sharp and commanding. "We've got a situation, and there's no time for formalities. I need each of you to head to specific locations immediately. We're dealing with a pattern. Former officers from the Darwin Potts 3 case are in danger, and they're becoming a danger to others. I need boots on the ground now." He quickly reads off the assignments. "Dexter Brown, you're headed to Paul Travis's townhouse on Cedar Lane. He was one of the officers involved in restraining Potts during the initial incident. Keith Johnson, your target is Darren Watts. He's at a rental apartment on Maple Street. He was in the room when Potts was pepper sprayed. Tony Stargill. You'll find Leo Simmons at his cabin on Pine Ridge Road. He was on transport duty that night. Julius Ray Wilson. Your target is Brian Cole. He lives in a neighborhood near Oakwood Drive. He helped draft the false incident report after Potts's death. Walker continues, his voice firm. When you locate them, proceed with extreme caution. No pepper spray and no lethal force. Whatever's happening here, it's triggering something in these men, and we can't escalate it further. Restrain them if necessary, but keep them alive. I'm heading to Greg Mills's address now. He's third on the list. Let's move. The detectives acknowledge their orders, and Walker ends the call, his heart pounding as he accelerates toward his destination. The suburban streets grow quieter as Walker approaches the address for Greg Mills. The neighborhood is eerily calm, the kind of silence that feels oppressive rather than peaceful. Neatly trimmed lawns and parked cars line the street, but no lights are on in Mills's house. Walker pulls onto the block, slowing his vehicle as he scans for any signs of activity. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a figure lunges into the headlights, its movement jerky and unnatural, like a marionette yanked by invisible strings. Walker slams his foot on the brake, the tires screeching in protest, but the figure doesn't stop. Instead, it hurls itself at the car, a feral scream ripping through the night. The driver's side window shatters in an explosion of glass, sharp shards slicing through the air like shrapnel. Walker throws his hands up instinctively, but it's too late. The man dives through the jagged frame, his body colliding with Walker's in a grotesque flurry of limbs and raw violence. The stench hits first, a rancid mix of sweat, blood, and decay that floods the cabin, making Walker gag. The man's eyes, wide and bloodshot, roll madly in their sockets, a grotesque blend of terror and fury. His face is a mask of smeared grime and blood, his teeth bared in a snarl that seems more animal than human. It takes Walker a heartbeat too long to recognize him. Greg Mills. Greg's naked body glistens, slick with sweat and streaked with dirt. His skin is taut and pale, veins bulging like dark rivers beneath the surface. Ragged scratches crisscross his torso, some fresh and oozing, others dried and crusted over. His hands claw at Walker with jagged, bloody nails, leaving crimson trails down his arms as he thrashes violently, his strength fueled by manic desperation. Walker's scream catches in his throat as Greg lunges closer, his breath hot and rancid. His mouth opens wide, too wide, revealing cracked, yellow teeth and blood-stained gums. A low, guttural growl rises from his chest, escalating into a shriek that pierces the air like a razor. Glass crunches beneath their weight as Greg writhes half inside the vehicle, his legs kicking wildly against the doorframe. Walker struggles to push him back, but Greg's grip is iron, his fingers digging into Walker's shoulders, drawing blood. A shard of glass embedded in the frame slices into Greg's thigh, and fresh blood pours out in dark, viscous rivulets, pooling on the seat and dripping onto the floor. Greg's face twists, his lips peeling back in a grotesque grimace, his teeth snapping inches from Walker's face. Spittle flies as he screams again, the sound raw and primal, reverberating through the confined space of the car. The whites of his eyes are almost entirely red. Blood vessels burst from whatever horror has consumed him. His head jerks erratically, like a rabid animal, his focus darting wildly between Walker and the world outside. Walker's hands slip on Greg's sweat-slicked skin as he fights to shove him back, his heart hammering against his ribcage like a trapped animal. Blood smears across his hands and arms, sticky and warm, as Greg's movements grow more frantic, his screams devolving into incoherent guttural sounds. The scene is chaos incarnate, an eruption of violence and terror, bathed in the harsh glare of the car's headlights and the metallic tang of blood filling the air. "They're in the air," Mills screams, his voice raw and broken. "They're in the air, Neil. They're—" His words are cut short as his body convulses violently. Mills collapses onto Walker's lap, his movements erratic and spasmodic. Blood begins to pour from his nose and mouth, pooling on Walker's lap. His breathing becomes shallow, his chest rattling with every heave. "Greg! Greg! Stay with me!" Walker shouts, trying to push the man upright. But it's too late. Mills's body stiffens, his eyes rolling back into his head, and with one final shudder, he goes still. Walker, his hands shaking, pushes Mills's lifeless form off him and steps out of the car, his mind racing. Blood and shards of glass cover the driver's seat, and his heart pounds as he tries to process what just happened. This wasn't just madness. It was something far worse. Walker looks down at Mills's lifeless body, now sprawled on the pavement, and clenches his fists. Whatever is happening to these men, it's spreading fast. And if they don't act quickly, it won't stop with them. Detective Neil Walker leans against the side of his car, his breaths coming fast and shallow as he stares at the carnage within. The shattered driver's side window is rimmed with jagged glass, the shards glittering in the faint streetlight. Blood smears the seat, the dashboard, and even the steering wheel, pooling in grotesque rivulets where Greg Mills's body had convulsed and collapsed. Tiny fragments of glass are embedded in the blood, creating a macabre mosaic that makes Walker's stomach churn. The air inside the car is heavy with the coppery tang of blood, mingling with the faint scent of sweat and something else, something acrid and chemical, like fear made tangible. Mills's lifeless body lies half on the pavement, his expression frozen in a twisted mask of agony and terror. His naked form is riddled with scratches, his fingernails caked with dried blood, as though he had tried to claw something invisible from his own skin. Walker's mind races, each thought louder and more frantic than the last. 3 men, 3 dead in 2 hours, all from the same case. He presses his hands to his temples, trying to stave off the rising tide of panic. This isn't random. It can't be. Someone is doing this. But how? Why? He replays the events in his mind, searching for connections, for meaning. The toxin. There must be a toxin, something unseen that's triggering this insanity. But how is it being delivered? Food, drink, airborne? And then there's the motive. Who would go to such lengths to target these men? Walker's thoughts circle back to Darwin Potts III. The case had been a stain on the department, a symbol of injustice that had haunted the city. But could someone have been angry enough, broken enough, to plan something this calculated, this horrific? Walker speaks aloud, his voice hoarse and trembling in the empty street. What are you missing, Neil? Think. Why now? Why like this? He snaps out of his thoughts and pulls his phone from his pocket, dialing the precinct. The operator picks up after the first ring. This is Detective Walker. I've got another death to report. Greg Mills. Same circumstances as the others. I'm going to need a new vehicle sent to my location on Evergreen and Maple. The car's compromised. Yes, Detective. We'll dispatch a unit immediately, the operator replies, the tension in her voice palpable. Walker ends the call and opens his conference line again, connecting with Dexter Brown, Keith Johnson, Tony Stargill, and Julius Ray Wilson. As the line connects, Walker's voice cuts through the tension. Team, it's me. I need to update you all on what just happened. I arrived at Greg Mills's address, and Walker hesitates for a moment, the weight of the words pressing down on him. He was already gone. He jumped through my car window. He was naked, screaming about something in the air. Died right there in my car. Same symptoms as the others. There's a stunned silence on the line before Tony Stargill speaks up, his voice low. You're saying Mills is dead too? That's 3 now. That's exactly what I'm saying, Walker replies, his voice tightening. I don't know who's doing this, but it's deliberate. And it's not just killing them, it's breaking them. Something is pushing them to the brink, making them hurt themselves in ways that, God, I've never seen anything like it. Keith Johnson's voice cuts in, cautious but firm. Do we have any leads on how this is happening? A toxin? Something else? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Walker says. I need all of you to be careful. Remember, no pepper spray, no lethal force, and absolutely no unnecessary risks. These men are dangerous, but they're also victims. The moment you get to your targets, call it in and wait for backup. We're not losing anyone else tonight. Understood, Julius Ray Wilson says grimly. We'll keep you updated as soon as we reach our locations. Walker nods to himself, grateful for the professionalism of his team. Good. Keep your heads on straight. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As the call ends, Walker leans back against his car, his mind racing. 3 deaths, all tied to the Darwin Potts III case. Whoever was behind this had to be stopped, and fast. But with each passing minute, the noose seemed to tighten, and the answers felt further out of reach.